So if you're in the middle of Alabama and you put up a Trump sucks sign, you are going to have massive problems.
You will not get someone coming to your house and threatening to kill you
You're
like you
nuts.
do.
Yes, you will.
How many instances right now have you seen of right wing or Trump supporters burning Palestinian flags that belong to other people?
I have not seen any.
Right. But there's probably
None at
some
all.
nation of 300 million people. Now, how many instances across all parts of the country have you seen of people tearing down posters or flyers of the hostages in Israel?
Oh yeah, lots of them. Tons.
FBI is mainly targeting domestic terrorists that are actually right-wing terrorists. And so, like, then again, people catch feelings because they're like, right-wing can't be terrorists. No, definitely can be terrorists. The dude sent pipe bombs to anyone who opposed Donald Trump. That guy's a terrorist.
Agreed.
Okay? And he happens to be a right-wing terrorist. And the FBI is saying at this point, the FBI, which is historically massively right-wing, the idea that the FBI is some sort of left-wing deep state is hilarious, not backed up.
Fun fact, that pipe bomb guy, that happened in Columbus Circle, which is where CNN is. My current fiance was in the building when they had to evacuate people because of that. So
Wow.
yeah, not a fun thing to do.
It was a fun fact, though.
Yeah.
Up by a single fact, but so the right wing, and so the FBI is saying, hey guys, we wish it weren't the case, but most of the domestic terrorists in America now are right wingers, and they're all trying to kill anyone who disagrees with Donald Trump.
I just think that's wrong, and I think I certainly think there are right-wing.
And by the way,
terrorists.
I just want to be clear. That doesn't mean all right-wingers or a majority of right-wingers are terrorists. It just means of the terrorists that are around now, which is a small group, right? Unfortunately, most of them are right-wingers at this point.
I think it's completely inverted, but the bias comes from the extremity of the actions taken by the terrorists. So you'll end up with a story of a guy, perhaps Maine. I think the story is more about what happened in Maine. He was mentally unwell and he was targeting his friends, is what they're reporting now. He thought his friends were talking behind his back and he went nuts. But
by the way, they're all mentally unwell.
Of course.
No, but it's not of course, because the right wing says anytime it's a white person or a right winger, they go mentally unwell. And I go, because I'm honest, I agree, right? And so, and they'll have their half of them will have their manifestos. Like in Charlottesville, he had a manifesto about race wars and how black people were terrible, and that's why he went inside a black church and shot him up. El Paso was against Latinos. There's the synagogue shootings. So these are political. There's no question. But no one who's mentally well goes into a synagogue or a church and shoots people. But that is also true of Muslims. When it comes to right wing, they're like, oh, yeah, that's so true when it comes to right wing. It's so true. They're just mentally unwell. They don't represent us. Muslims. Oh, it's all Muslims. It's all Muslims. They're all mentally well. That's why they shot up people. They don't have any mental health problems. Their problem is that they're Muslim.
Yeah, I gotta interject here. So first of all, he means Charleston, not Charlottesville. He was thinking of Dylan Roof. Obviously, Cenk can't go without mentioning Dylan Roof ever. That's like his thing. But as far as this, they're not all mentally unwell. There are some people who are ginned up on like political hysteria. They don't have a diagnosable mental condition and they kill people. Like one of the examples that I used was the IRA. They're like an Irish nationalist group that wanted to have their more Catholic Ireland, which is like, the non-British ruled Ireland, and they would blow things up. Like this was not a bunch of mentally unwell people. This was a terrorist organization with an ideology, and they were engaged in these attacks in order to forward that ideology. Like, so this is ridiculous that they're all like mentally unwell. And to Cenk's point about Islamic extremists, a lot of them are sane, normal people who take up the cause because they think their religion compels them to do so. So some of them are mentally unwell for sure, but a bunch of them aren't. And by the way, like a lone wolf random guy who gets ginned up on hysteria with a pre-existing mental condition from internet content is more likely to be mentally unwell than somebody who's like holding down a job, has a family and all that, and needs to do this for the glory of God. So no, he's just wrong here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree completely, because like if you exist in a culture where your culture says, hey, don't go kill a bunch of people, and then you get you part of some online community or whatever that says something, and you go and you get a gun and you go out and do Dylan Roof thing, or you shoot a bunch of people in a church, or you shoot a bunch of cops or something. Like, if that's so outside the norms of cultural acceptance, so that when you do the action, everyone's denouncing it, even people that kind of are somewhat sympathetic with the political position, then I agree that that person generally is probably mentally unwell to engage in that action. But when you have a situation where, now obviously not every person that is, a Muslim is this, or not every person that's committed an act of a violent act in the name of Islam is this, but it's very different if you grow up in a culture that tells you like America is evil, or gay people are evil, or Israelis are evil, and you go and you commit some sort of horrible fucked up thing like Hamas did, or maybe even 9/11, to example, where if you commit the action, this violent terrorist action, and then a bunch of people wherever you live are all cheering for you, so that is the cultural norm, I don't think you are mentally unwell at that point. Then is what you're saying. Then you are just indoctrinated with a culture that's basically getting you to commit violent action.
And I would pose this question to anybody who's like Cenk, who puts this forward, and I wish Tim would have asked him. Is it true that you believe that the rational response to Israeli bombing campaigns for people on the ground who lose family members is to join extremist organizations like Hamas? Like, that's what you would do if you lost your family, because this is something that Cenk says. This is something that Anna said on the PBD podcast, that like, if you kill my family, I have nothing to live for. Mm-hmm. Is that a rational response, or are all of these people mentally ill? Right. Because you can't have both. So
no way, it's rational as hell. I'm getting even.
Yeah, so there are people who definitely have mental illnesses, and a lot of these individual cases, like the guy in Maine, seems like he has a mental illness, right? He's hearing voices, there's a record of that and all that. But the guy in New Zealand, he had a cold, calculated plan in order to enrage people. He picked his target. It's a premeditated action, and there's no real indication of a underlying mental illness. And we have to get over this, that it can all be blamed on something like out of our control, or it's not like a normal standard evil of man kind of situation. So no, he's just dead wrong. Like, there are people who are like functioning doctors that end up joining these Islamic terror organizations because they believe in their religion and they believe that's where it's directing them. Like, these are rational people making choices that are horrific.
Right. Now, I don't know enough about the New Zealand situation. I mean, the guy could be cold and calculating, still be a psychopath.
Well, that's a guy who targeted, it's in Christchurch. He targeted Muslims. Right. He mentioned PewDiePie before, like on his live stream, to get more attention. Right. And he wrote out, he's like, I want people in America to fight over gun control. So I'm going to do this here and make it as incendiary as possible. So like, he specifically picked his target, and there's no indication of a pre-existing mental condition or anything like that.
Well, would sacrificing yourself for this weird cause, to me, would be indication of not mental wellness in the first place. Most people would not be willing to do that.
I mean, it depends how broad you want to make this this mental like health thing. You know what I mean? But yeah, there are people who are violent, and they believe that violence is the rational thing.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, and his nephew, Cenk's nephew, is one of those people. So. Yeah.
Well,
no, that's exactly bigotry. No, all those dudes have massive mental health problems as well. So instead of saying, "Hey, I hate black people," they're saying, "I hate the West," or whatever it is.
But so here's my point.
And again, like, being a racist, right, does not make you mentally ill. Like, It doesn't. Like, so, like, there are many people, like, again, you can't say we all have these underlying biases and whatnot, and it's like baked into our society, but also like when people act out in the most extreme ways, then they're mentally ill. Now, I don't know Dylan Roof's specifics, but he got the death penalty, so he wasn't that mentally ill. Like, they decided that he needed to be executed. Now,
it's a little different though. There's a lot of political pressure in those sort of situations, right?
Well, sure, but I'm just saying he wasn't deemed mentally unfit. Like, and then you have the guy in Buffalo, right? And his ideology makes no sense. Like, this guy was like, I need to get rid of the replacers, and then he goes after Black Americans, which, depending on who you are as like a white person, is definitely true for me because my family came here in like the 30s on my Irish side. You're not here as long as the average Black American's descendant is. It's just a fact. So it made no sense what he was doing. But am I going to pin that down to mental illness? Like, I don't know. Like, I would have to see the history. So I don't like this like hand waving. And it's meant to excuse the fact that, and by the way, they say this in Hamas, and a bunch of these organizations will say this, that they believe that there is more glory in death, and their opponents believe that staying alive is like the highest value. So like, this is something that is taught, indoctrinated into these people. And, you know, like, I don't believe it's all down to mental illness. This is a hand wave for Cenk to excuse Islamic terror.
Totally.
The examples you gave are these extreme examples that are horrifying. We try to prevent, and they're acts of evil, abject evil. On the left, you get what I would call more blunt terror. So, for instance, the George Floyd riots. When you had small towns across this country, Michael Tracy's reporting, showing a grocery store with its windows smashed out, and they spray paint on the boarded up window saying, please don't hurt us. When you have people in Berkeley, I was at a bar in Berkeley, and they had Trump sucks, Trump is a pig on the window. And I'm having a drink, and I asked, this is like 2017, I was like, you guys not big Trump fans? And the bartender's like, no, we like him. And I'm like, why would you put that in the window? If we don't, they'll smash our windows out and attack us. That people live in, have you been to Berkeley? There's a Burger King with a big sign in the window saying, we are not a corporate chain, we are family owned, please don't hurt us. I'm like, why would you live that way? You look at May 29th, when far leftists firebombed the White House grounds and St. John's Church. And this is not major news. There's no committee hearings. But if you're somebody who lives, I'll give you a more recent example. When I'm in Reston, Virginia, having dinner with the team here, a guy comes up and says, you're not going to hear this a lot in Reston, but I'm a big fan. And I was like, actually, like 4 people already have come up. And okay, that's the blunt terror of, in a town I live in, I have to whisper, and I'm scared that someone might find out I listen to Timcast. When in reality, people who worked there and other people had already said this, but they all seem to say the same things. I'm scared to express my opinions.
That's not terrorism, Tim.
But it is.
No,
it is people who are living in terror for political reasons.
No. Let me clarify. Okay, so
firebombing the White House is not terror.
So no, firebombing, of course, is.
They did,
but that's Tim. That is enormously rare on the left. So you can always go back to, hey, the guy who shot Steve Scalise. Hey, we found it one time. Okay, but what you're talking about is cultural domination. And is that true in Berkeley, that the left dominates in a way that is oppressive to the right? Like
it's not the right. I'm talking about
no, I get it.
Asian salon owners.
So if I look up the definition of terrorism, it says the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political aims. I think 100% we should do this, and I think the right should pick up this mantle because the left isn't going to do it. That you could call all the rioting that happened during BLM, any left-wing rioting that occurs, 100% is terrorism.
Yeah,
and
totally.
should be
Domestic
characterized
terrorism.
as domestic terrorism. And it has been this kind of left-wing narrative that's gotten away with this claim that, like, oh, it's just the right that has domestic terrorism, because whenever there's, not always, but often whenever there's this, left-wing domestic terrorism, which does look different, right? It does look, these riots and things do look different than normal right-wing terrorism. They just classify it as not terrorism. They say, oh, it's just, it's just a riot, it's just a mob,
it's the voice of the unheard. The voice of the unheard. What are you talking about?
A lot of right-wing like instances that Cenk is talking about is like a guy who, by the way, has no institutional support,
right?
That will go out and do something horrible in a blaze of glory. That seems to be what Cenk is like referencing.
Yeah,
but he's pretending away, and he's going to do it worse in a little bit, the ongoing riots that we saw in the Black Lives Matter movement. Like, he's going to say later on that there were only 2 Antifa guys in Portland. Let's be clear. They declared a riot 100 times during the Black Lives Matter riots in Portland. 100 times. That's not 2 people. So, like, and, obviously, Cenk, and as I mentioned in my video, initially he backed up Michael Forrest Reinhold, the guy who killed Aaron J. Danielson.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, he lied in his Vice interview and used information from the media to backwards justify a reason for it. He said that Danielson had a knife because the media reported on his Instagram post from earlier in the day where he did have a knife, and Danielson didn't have a knife on him. So like this guy was objectively lying in the Vice interview about him threatening his friend of color with a knife, and Cenk backed him, and he never retracted it. He never apologized for it. He said he was the same, if not a better justification of self-defense as Kyle Rittenhouse.
Wow. I think it's Cenk, come on. You have to retract the statement. You said, in this conversation that if you're wrong, you should acknowledge it. And
the video's still up, by the way.
Right. I mean, that's a huge incorrect thing to be promoting.
And anybody can go to the Ryan Hall warrant and see him hiding in the parking lot and pulling out the gun and following Danielson down before he killed him. So this was a premeditated act of murder. But Cenk pretends it away because there's only 2 Antifa guys in Portland, and he was one of them, I guess, maybe.
True.
I know, and the middle as well, right? Yes, but is it also true that you'll get the same kind of cultural domination in the middle of Alabama? So if you're in the middle of Alabama and you put up a Trump sucks sign, you are going to have massive problems.
You will not get someone coming to your house and threatening to kill you.
You're nuts. Yes, you will. In fact, there's a guy who had a Trump sign in the middle of Pennsylvania, and his neighbor, a Biden sign or something, and his neighbor shot him and killed him because he's like, "You're against Trump. I hate you. I'm going to murder you."
Biden sign?
I forget what the sign was, but it was something either against Trump or pro Biden or pro something. It happened a couple of years ago. You could definitely look it up. And so, yeah, no. There's huge parts of this country that
I couldn't find the incident he was referring to. Are you familiar with this? People getting shot over a Biden sign?
I've never heard of this. It could be possible. I mean, the idea that Cenk would just make something up would be ridiculous. So,
isn't that why you're here, Sean?
Yeah, I'm looking, by the way, and I see like vandals targeting a Trump sign, but that would be a pro-Trump side. But point is, we've seen multiple videos of people being attacked for wearing a MAGA hat. There's the San Jose rally when Trump was running for president, where people surrounded it and they attacked multiple people. And like it was bloody. It was a nasty situation. And the media reported it as the Trump supporters who were leaving this rally and getting attacked by a mob as clashing with the counter protesters. Like it was equivalent. There's like a hilarious image where this woman, I think she's wearing a Tom Brady jersey or maybe it might even be a Broncos jersey of Peyton Manning or something. And she's surrounded by a mob of people and she's backed into a corner. And they use that as the image while saying that she's clashing with these protesters. Like she's trying to go into the building to get away from them. But like they paint it as they were being attacked. So yeah, like the idea that Trump supporters haven't been attacked for wearing the MAGA hat is ridiculous and absurd. Like it happens all the time. We've seen a million videos of it. And Cenk's just trying to pretend it away. And it's not the same as in like if you put up a Biden sign in Alabama.
Well, I don't know if he's saying it doesn't happen. I think he's trying to say it happens equally depending on where in the country you live.
Yeah, and I'm saying that's not true. That's not the same.
I mean, I agree. I mean, well, personally, I've seen a lot more of people, seen a lot more stories of people attacking people with MAGA hats than people attacking Biden people. I know in Pennsylvania, when I tried to find the story, there was all these stories about people stealing political signs in Pennsylvania. So it became like a thing in some area of the state. So I don't know. It could be possible. I couldn't find the specific situation he was talking about.
Imagine it's a guy who was stealing a Trump sign and like that he thought it was a burglary. So then he killed him.
Well, I mean, if that's what happened, right? But
we don't know. Cenk's about to reinvent reality in a few minutes. So like we don't know what he actually meant.
Right.
Did you see the clip of the cyclist that stopped and burned the Trump won sign?
No.
In the guy's front yard? Yeah. I guess he's charged, it looks like.
I mean, here's what I'll say. How many instances right now, because this has become a left-right issue in a lot of ways, how many instances right now have you seen of right-wing or Trump supporters burning Palestinian flags that belong to other people?
I have not seen any.
Right, but there's probably
None
some
at all.
nation of 300 million people. Now, how many instances across all parts of the country have you seen of people tearing down posters or flyers of the hostages in Israel?
Oh yeah, lots of them. Tons.
Like that's what we're talking
and they all
about.
disgust me too.
Like that's what we're talking about right here.
Here, I got man caught on camera burning Trump sign. He did it on camera.
So there was one story in Washington where two women got in some altercation where one of them shot each other over some political sign, though. The article doesn't say what the politics of the sign was, other than it was political or who was on what position. There's some story that says the headline is Topeka man shoots teens he thought were stealing Donald Trump sign. And he sought immunity under standard ground law. I don't know what the case was there. And then there was another one
sure he lost
where a Kansas person shot 3 people that he thought were stealing their campaign signs. I think it's kind of hard to argue if you think someone's stealing your campaign sign that you shot them. But
yeah, I mean, you could do that in Texas at night, but
yeah,
only at night.
If they're on your property and you're like afraid they're gonna attack you or something. But if you just see someone picking up your campaign sign, it's gonna be hard to argue that self-defense, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
I just hate this entire argument because it seems I mean, what's the point? You're just basically arguing for a stereotype. You're basically saying, look, the right are the violent ones. And look, let me argue that by saying all the terrorism is done by the right. And no one on the left ever does terrorism at all. Aren't you just, I mean, you're just arguing for stereotypes of left and right.
This is what Cenk does, though. Like,
right. It's, I don't like it.
I mean, there's a TYT supporter in Colorado who killed somebody at one of these like Antifa Trump rallies. Like Cenk's never talked about him. Like, you know, he was an Antifa guy acting as a security guard and he just shot somebody. Now they were arguing, you know, the guy was kind of big, but he shot that guy to death. They've never covered that.
That wasn't the guy that maced. The guy pulled out the mace, was it?
I know Aaron J. Danielson had mace on him when he was shot and killed.
There was someone who they started macing someone else or something. I don't remember.
I'm not sure. Maybe in Colorado there was mace involved too.
Right. Oh, these stories bleed together.
But I mean, mace is like distinctly a non-deadly weapon, and if you're going to use a deadly weapon against that, I mean,
well, if you listen, my position is if you get in an argument with someone and the other person pulls out mace and starts macing you, I fucking shoot them. Okay. If you didn't start the argument, if you're not doing anything wrong, I don't have a problem with that.
Hi, you just listened to a clip from the Sitch and Adams show. If you like what you heard, you can listen to our live show right here on this channel on Sunday, starting at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you want, you can super chat us. We read $20 and up super chats on the show and then do a follow-up stream on the following Tuesday where we read the rest of the unread super chats and interact with fans of the show. Subscribe to this channel right here to listen to the live show or to listen to more of our awesome clips.